Justice Committee, we heard moving testimony from individuals in the persons with disability community who are gravely concerned about this government's Bill C-7 and the impact on their community. Krista Carr, Executive Vice President of Inclusion Canada, said that if Bill C-7 passes, discrimination on the basis of disability would once again be entrenched in Canadian law. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing? Listen to the voices of Canadians living with disabilities and support our amendments that would reinstate safeguards to protect vulnerable Canadians.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, from the very beginning, we've worked closely with advocates within the disability community to hear their concerns and to look at how we can get the balance right. We know how important it is to move forward with a medical assistance in dying bill that is constitutional, that both maintains and protects people's rights while at the same time protecting the most vulnerable. It's something we did as we moved forward a number of years ago. We're continuing to move forward while listening to people to try and get a very difficult balance right, but Canadians deserve us to get this right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister is listening, he's heard from physicians who've referred to Bill C-7 as a massive failure of compassion. He might have heard from disability advocates from across the country who've raised alarm that the bill goes too far and devalues their lives. One of the witnesses at committee said that she believed all her doctor saw when looking at her was a woman alone, sick, tired, and probably tired of living. So let's get the balance right, Mr. Speaker. Why is the Prime Minister rushing this bill when so many people fear the vulnerable will be impacted? Can he listen and have amendments that will protect society's most vulnerable?
Honourable Prime Minister.
The member opposite well knows that the courts have ruled on this, that there are pressures and there are questions from many different Canadians on all sides of us wanting to get this bill right and being able to move it forward. We continue to work as government should, and indeed as a parliament should, listening to different perspectives, trying to get that balance right, because we know what we need to do is ensure that all Canadians' rights are protected while at the same time we protect the most vulnerable. As this parliament has in the past, I look forward to good, robust conversations as we work to get something very important just right for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Prime Minister stated he thought a trade agreement with the United Kingdom was an easy one to move on, then blamed delays on the UK lacking bandwidth. UK representatives have denied this claim. The Prime Minister patronized one of our most trusted allies. The government has had years to work on this agreement, and now there are only 23 more sitting days of Parliament in order to make this happen. When is the Prime Minister going to be bringing an agreement to Parliament?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's been many years that we have been working on moving forward on a seamless transition for the UK following its Brexit to ensure that the trade relationship between Canada and the United Kingdom continues on the same rhythm. We are hopeful that we are going to be able to get to an agreement very soon, because indeed we know that that transition to Brexit is happening in a matter of weeks. We continue to work to ensure protection for Canadian companies, access for Canadian consumers, and certainty for our UK friends.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this government spent 5 years chasing a free trade agreement with communist China until the foreign minister just recently gave up this summer. But with our oldest ally, the United Kingdom, this government has been missing for 18 months. Yesterday, in the United Kingdom's House of Commons, Mr. Speaker, a minister for the British government suggested that our Prime Minister's statements shouldn't be taken seriously. Mr. Speaker, it's taken them 5 years to realize what we've known from day one. So will the Prime Minister today commit to having a Canada-UK free trade agreement completed and presented to Parliament by the end of the year?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said, we're working extremely hard with the UK on ensuring that they get a seamless transition. They chose to leave the CETA, the European Union agreement with Canada. We look forward to seeing that roll over in a seamless transition, but it is really entirely up to the UK to get that done. We are there to sign it, and we are very hopeful that we will be able to move forward shortly, but we respect the sovereignty of the UK and its ability to make its own decisions.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, a company called Proline Advantage got a $371 million sole source contract for medical gowns. The problem? They don't make medical gowns. FTI got a $237 million untendered contract for medical ventilators. The problem? They don't make any. This summer, We Charity got a $900 million sole source contract to invent a bursary program. Why is it so easy to get untendered contracts from this government for hundreds of millions of dollars for services you don't even provide? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the start of the pandemic, we've seen Canadians, we've helped Canadians, and creators and producers, we've seen them come forward to pitch in and help out. They've switched to producing PPE. They've developed solutions here in Canada. They took up the challenge, and we no longer have a PPE crisis. We're very proud of the efforts all Canadians have made, and we will continue to work to ensure that all Canadians are protected. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, last month the government insisted on creating a special committee to examine all COVID-related spending. We've since learned that $371 million was spent on medical gowns at double the price to a sole proprietorship who sells protein shakes in his basement, not medical equipment. And the $237 million, overpriced by $100 million, went to a former Liberal member, Frank Bayliss, who sat here in this place as recently as last year. It's funny. Can the Prime Minister explain to us why they're trying to block their own special committee on COVID spending? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can understand that someone listening to this question period might be very concerned about the fact that we may be sorely lacking personal protection equipment, but I'd like to reassure both the House and all Canadians watching that in recent days, product was delivered to the provinces and territories, over 5 million N95 masks, over 3 million surgical masks, and over 1 million gowns. We will continue to deliver the necessary equipment to the provinces and territories for all Canadians all across the country during this pandemic. The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the member for Saint Laurent angered all Canadians when she questioned whether French was in decline in Quebec. And privately, other Liberals are apparently saying they don't think French is all that important. The Prime Minister himself appointed this member to the committee, the Official Languages Committee, and she's lost all credibility, all legitimacy to stay on it. What's he waiting for? Why doesn't he do the right thing and immediately replace her on the Official Languages Committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the member apologized for her comments. We will always stand up to defend French and the French fact in Quebec and all across Canada. This government has always been there to defend language minorities. We know how important it is to have a bilingual country, and to have a bilingual country, Quebec has to be above all, first and foremost, Francophone, French-speaking. And that's why we will not be lectured by the Conservative Party, which has always attacked Francophone rights all across the country. The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, but what the Prime Minister has said is disrespectful and not in keeping with reality. The President of the Liberal Party of Canada in Quebec, Ms. Chelsea Craig, said Bill 101 is an oppressive law that has ruined education for Anglophones in Quebec. Dictating that I have to speak French at work is oppressive. Mr. Speaker, It's crazy. This is the Liberal Party of Canada's Quebec president who said that. Will the Prime Minister immediately condemn the disrespectful comments made by his president to Quebecers, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The Liberal Party and the Liberal government will always defend both official languages. I would give my colleague the opportunity to confirm that the Conservative Party in future will only appoint bilingual judges to the Supreme Court. That's the commitment I made as Prime Minister. That's the Liberal Party of Canada's commitment. Yes or no? Will the Conservative Party only appoint bilingual judges to the Supreme Court in the future? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Always defend, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister and his official languages minister are all talk, no action. It's been 5 years now that the Liberals have been in office, and 5 years that they've done nothing for official languages. French is not a priority to this government. Let them table legislation in this place to modernize the Official Languages Act before Christmas. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, a missed opportunity for the Conservatives to defend French. The leader of the Conservative Party stood up in the House to answer my question. My question was, will he undertake to appoint only bilingual judges to the Supreme Court in the future? And he didn't undertake to do that. So let's just agree that the Conservative Party is not the party that's going to defend Francophones and French in Canada. As always, it will always take Liberal governments to do that. The Honourable Member for Miramichi Grand Lake. Mr. Speaker, now more than ever, Canadians need high-speed broadband internet access because more and more people are working and learning from home and accessing important services like telehealth. Can the Prime Minister give us an update on the Universal Broadband Fund and how it's going to improve connectedness for all Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for Miramichi Grand Lake for his question. He's totally right. Canadians count on the internet to connect with resources and their loved ones. That's why we've announced a $1.75 billion investment to help all Canadians have high-speed access. That will connect some 400,000 more homes to high-speed internet access, especially in rural areas. This is the largest federal investment of the kind, and it will make a real difference in people's lives.
Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, we're reaching epidemic levels of suicide in our country. The Prime Minister's own cabinet have acknowledged that suicide is on the rise and that we're facing a mental health crisis. Last week, the Prime Minister told Canadians who are feeling anxious or overwhelmed to call 211. Again, for the record, 211 is a directory. It's not even available in all regions of our country, and it's not a national suicide prevention hotline. Is the Prime Minister comfortable with telling Canadians in crisis to please hold?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we need to be there for Canadians when they need us the most. Canadians deserve access to mental health services regardless of where they live or when they need help. We're having discussions with partners on how we can help more people get the access to the help they need. We're open to having discussions about a consolidated hotline, and we'll work with members of this House on how we can continue to support Canadians through this pandemic and beyond. This pandemic has exposed many challenges in our society that we are going to continue to fix, not just for now, but for the years forward as well.
The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the U.S. has taken real action on suicide prevention by moving to a 988 National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The Prime Minister has said over and over again in this question period about protecting Canadians and saving lives. So this is a simple question. The time for him to step up is right now, and it's right here. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing, commit to working together in a bipartisan way, and bring 988 to Canada, yes or no?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are committed to working together to figure out how to best serve Canadians suffering from mental health challenges. In the very beginning, in 2015, we brought in record investments to the provinces on mental health. We've continued to work, including during this pandemic, on increasing the funding for Kids Help Phone by $7.5 million, by reaching out to the United Way to help them provide more services. But we're always happy to do more, and I look forward to working with the honourable member on this issue and making sure we're getting the very best help to Canadians that we possibly can.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there are rare occasions where I agree with the Prime Minister. We do need to be there. We all know that mental health issues have been aggravated by COVID-19. We all know that a single point of contact for those in need in their darkest hours will save lives. Isolation has already been a death sentence for too many. All MPs in the House know members of their family, their communities, and even their political families who've been struggling. So, we have an opportunity to work together for the mental health and well-being of all Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join our effort to have a 988 hotline national by Christmas?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've made many investments in mental health. We've made many investments in programs that offer supports from Kids Help Phone to the United Way to others. We are happy to work with all members of this House on something, yes, indeed, we can all agree on. We need better supports, and we look forward to working with members to figure out exactly what that is and how we can get it delivered to Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Beaches East York.
Mr. Speaker, as Canadians, we take our digital privacy seriously, and there's been good reason for increasing concerns about how that data and personal information is being collected and used. In a fast-moving digital world, we need both strong privacy and digital rights and a strong regulator to enforce them. Can the Prime Minister tell my constituents and all Canadians how our government plans to modernize and strengthen Canada's digital privacy laws?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Beaches East York for his question and for his tireless advocacy on this important file. To be competitive and to recover from the effects of this pandemic, our economy must harness the power of data, while at the same time protecting the privacy of Canadians. Canadians deserve more control and greater transparency over how companies handle their personal information. This is why we are proud to introduce the Consumer Privacy Protection Act, which will establish Canada as a global leader in protecting digital privacy.
The honourable member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has hit hard, but it's not hitting everyone in the same way. Women, young people, and racialized people are harder hit than others. Women in the workplace have lost ground, and the unemployment rate for young people is around 20%. In some racialized communities, it's up to 30%.
We have a point of order for the Honourable.
The translation volume at the same volume that the Honourable Member is speaking of.
Okay, peut-être je pourrais demander.
Perhaps I could ask the member to see whether he's on the right channel. Has he selected French as his channel?
S'il vous plaît, recommencez.
Please start over, and we'll make sure that the translation is working. Fine. Mr. Speaker, the pandemic is hitting everyone. It's hitting hard, but some segments of the population are more affected than others. Women, young people, and racialized people are experiencing harder effects. The place of women in the workplace women have lost ground. The unemployment rate for young people is up to 20%, and in some racialized communities, up to 30%. What is the government doing to help those young people to make sure that they regain trust and hope for the future? The Honourable Prime Minister, I'd like to thank the member for his question. That's something we're also concerned about, very concerned. The pandemic is indeed, like any crisis, affecting the most vulnerable more than others. And that's why we've been there since the outset to help women and young people and minority communities. We will continue to look for ways to help, and I'd like to thank all members who are pitching in and pointing out that more needs to be done for certain communities. We will be there and continue to invest to make sure everyone gets through this crisis and create a better world afterwards. That's all the time we have today for question period.
I believe that we have a point of order. The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that if you seek the advice of the House, you'll find unanimous consent for the following motion: that the House recognise that the French language situation is still fragile, that the use of French is declining both in Quebec and in Canada, and calls upon the government to commit to an action plan in collaboration with the provinces and territories to protect and better promote the French language in Quebec and Canada.